What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, we'll start with Quinn, lifelong Bengals fan. I saw that Cincinnati, once again, ranked toward the bottom of the NFLPA's annual report card, specifically dead last in treatment of families as well as food and dining. Do you think the NFL should require every team to spend a certain percentage of their media check each year, 400 plus million last year, on improving these initiatives? I feel like there would be an equitable way to always almost force owners to reinvest in their franchise rather than pocketing the money themselves. I give the Bengals credit for upgrading their locker room. I noticed that when Burrow was giving Chase and Higgins a hug. I'm like, this doesn't, was it Three Rivers or was that Pittsburgh? Whatever their stadium was called, which they've now added a naming rights to. The locker room looked like they were at LSU or something. I'm like, this looks incredible. But improving the treatment of players' family, putting daycare center in the stadium, and improving, I think this is a tough one because, like, it's not really the league's job to make sure that, like, your food tastes better than the Ravens or the Steelers or as good. Like, they're not feeding them shit. I do think it's difficult for some of these owners that came up in a league that did not have money. They have struggled to make the transition to, like, guys, you can spend, let's say, $250,000 on the upgrade of your family dining and paying for, you probably need multiple, quote unquote, people in the daycare area that might cost you, let's just pick an even number for totality of some of these improvements, $500,000. For some of these people, that number, because they go back to the 70s and the 80s, that was a huge number. And it was. That's an irrelevant number now. You could find that money in your couch cushion in the training room of the facility. And I think it's hard for them to get behind. Now, some people go above and beyond, but that's always been the case. Some companies go above and beyond in all of our industries. Other companies don't care. I'm of the mindset, like, I am paying you so much fucking money that, like, if we're complaining that, like, the chicken's a little dry, I got a problem with that. Like, if you're complaining that the box at the stadium's not free, like, yeah, we pay for that. Now, is it like every team in the league has daycare available and you don't? Like, yeah, that's kind of loser behavior. But, like, I do think we get a little caught up. And let's face it, some of these guys they are coming. In college is about recruiting. The NFL is not about recruiting. I pay you for your services. College is kind of doing that now with NIL. But I think there's a fine line. I think clearly the Bengals, the Cardinals, some of these teams, the Patriots have been getting knocked relative, because the other thing is, how would these guys know what's good and bad beside, like, coming from college? But some of them have kids in college, but the majority of them in college, they're living pretty well. If you're a Texas, Bama, Georgia, all the top 50 programs, even the random programs like Minnesota, right? And UCLA, like, these guys have it pretty good. I think when they start talking to their friends, like if I'm on the Bengals or I'm on the Cardinals and my college teammate is playing on the Rams or the Eagles and I hear about what they're doing, I'm like, this sucks. So I think it's a lot of that, but I don't think the league is going to get involved unless it was something just egregious. And again, like, remember they used to complain about the chairs in the locker room for the Chiefs were too small? I'm sorry, like, I can't get worked up over that because clearly it's not limiting your ability to win. Like, the moment it limits your ability to win, then we got a problem. Are these first class problems? I think a little bit. Because I listen, I'm not saying I agree with this, but I think Mike Brown would be like, it's not my issue to figure out daycare for you on game day. Like, I'm paying you, Joe Burrow, $50 million. I'm not. He doesn't even have a kid, but Jamar Chase, whoever, T Higgins, like, you can't get a babysitter. That's my problem. But Jeffrey Lurie or Steve Buscetti's doing it. It's like, well, maybe you should. But then again, like, Eddie DeBartolo used to do shit above and beyond everyone else in the ages. That's part of life. Some people do things that other people are not willing to do. Longtime Patriot fan. I'm not sure I like the Garrett Bradbury signing. I know Vrabel is a defensive minded coach, but I feel as if the Patriots are going a little too far on defense. What do you think we should do with the fourth pick? I do think Mac Hollins helps us. Helps us. Oh, I don't think Mac Hollins helps us, but I also think there's a hole to fill at tackle. Well, I do think if there was a super high end tackle in this draft, someone viewed as can't miss, and they don't happen as much as they used to, like the Panay Sewell types, just a guy that was going to go really high that everyone, you never truly know, but like more than likely this guy's going to be a Pro Bowler. I think they would 100%. Joe Alt. If Joe Alt was in this draft, the Patriots would take him at number 4. That guy doesn't exist. There are a lot of question marks with all these offensive linemen. The Missouri guy, obviously Texas guy, the Will Campbell at LSU. I think there are just a lot of question marks. And the guy with the least amount of question marks, just because he's probably many consider the second best player in this draft, is Travis Hunter. And I think when you find yourself in a position where I would always take a lineman over a Travis Hunter if all things are equal, but things are not equal. It was why I supported the Lions taking Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. It was an awful draft. Like if they had passed on other sweet defensive linemen who were viewed as like top 7 picks, I'd be like, yeah, that's stupid. They did not do that. So like to me, I think you can easily justify Travis Hunter and go, listen, we clearly value the line of scrimmage, but like we'd rather like the risk on all these guys is pretty high. So why don't we take the number one recruit coming out of high school 3 years ago, the guy that went on to set like snap records in Division 1 football and he won the Heisman Trophy. I don't think who can play multiple positions. So I don't think it's that crazy. Got a Fugazi Friday for you. It's actually a 2-for-1 and it is free agency related. The initial reporting of any deal is completely fake. The reporting numbers are never as high as they report. And now they're reporting who negotiated the deal, a detail that no one cares about. Complete fugazi. I do think people in the media, like old school Jays, get very angry. It's like Schefter just quoted their agent. Us as the consumer, none of us actually care. We are not bothered like the big Jays at that information. Just tell me who signs where. Now, I do think we have all come to grips with these numbers are fake. But when you're given, hey, they just signed this guy for 3 years, $60 million, dollars, you're like, oh, Jonathan Allen, $20 million dollars a year. And then you find out, like, oh, he got guaranteed $17 million. dollars. So it's actually a 1 year contract, right? And that is by far the biggest difference in football than the other two sports. Like if you sign Juan Soto to 10 years, $600 million, dollars, like he's getting the $600 million, dollars, unless he chooses to opt out. So I just think we've kind of come to grips with it. It's like Sam Darnold, $100 million, 55 guaranteed. Well, it's actually a 1 year, $37 million contract. So it's like, yeah, I think we don't really care. I think a lot of people, Jordan Schultz is constantly going back. Like we don't care who breaks the news. We really don't. Adam is, I'm a huge Adam Schefter guy. But like whether Schefter breaks it or whether Tom Pelissar, it doesn't matter to us, the consumer. Just give me the information. Uh, I also think I like my newsbreakers to not just rely on agents. So if you're only relying on agents, I don't take you that seriously. I need my newsbreakers to be talking to head coaches and the GMs because ultimately they're the guys making the decision. And one, I know Schefter knows every coach and GM. I would say Rap Sheet at this point in time does too. I'll tell you who knows a ton of coaches and scouts is Diana Rossini. I mean, she is fucking dialed in with people, and that's if you're not talking to them. The agents they don't control anything. And here's the other thing: is like the teams when the numbers come out, they're not going to push back against it because they want everyone to be happy, right? They don't give a shit whether you think it's 100 million or if it's actually 5 million. Like they just want the agent and the players to be happy. But I agree that the numbers are complete fake. I mean, completely fake. The only thing that's not fake in a transaction, a lot of fluids here. I got coffee, water. Is a trade, right? Like DK Metcalf. I still haven't seen like how much money did the Steelers actually give him? Clearly a lot. But like the only thing I know is what they traded for him. Second round pick. Like that's no one can debate that. And I don't know the number, but whatever number pick that is, let's say I'll just guess 58. It would probably be a little higher than that. 60. Whatever it is. Like that is the pick for DK Metcalf. I'm 23-year-old Browns fan. Thus, I've only known losing. You made the playoffs 2 years ago. You made the playoffs in 2020. You made the playoffs a couple times. I was adamant the Browns should trade Myles Garrett, maximize your return, 2 first-round picks, and rebuild. With us in a division with Burrow and Lamar, what should the Browns do with number 2? Hunter seems like a generational prospect, but quarterback is unclear. Cousins, Rodgers, or Wilson will not win this division. Steelers, would you roll with the dice with Shedeur in past prospects like Carter and Hunter? I agree with Colin. It is a quarterback league, and if you don't have a guy, you're not winning. Well, I think if I'm going to take Shedeur, the GM and the coach have to like him. So if Stefanski in his offense thinks that Shedeur can function at a high level, then 100% take him. I was talking to some people like, dude, the crazy thing about Shedeur Sanders is his comp. I mean, what's weird about the player is his dad is like one of the greatest athletes in the history of the world. I mean, pound for pound, I mean, on the short list of like Bo Jackson, Jim Brown, Michael Jordan, Deion Sanders. Like it is not a long list before you say Deion Sanders' name. And his son is just not a great athlete. His Shedeur Sanders is much closer to a Jimmy Garoppolo or Derek Carr or an Andy Dalton level player. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, those guys, Andy Dalton was going to the playoffs every year. Derek Carr took the Raiders to the playoffs. Jimmy Garoppolo was a starting quarterback on a Super Bowl team. So it's like, can Shedeur play like those guys? If you put him on a good team, he can be solid. And if the answer is yes, then you got to pull the trigger, right? Like if I told you right now that they could get Andy Dalton, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, that was going to be him in his prime for several years, I think the Browns would do it. People would be like, Middlekauff, you're a hater, better than Jimmy. Like, no. 10 years ago, Shedeur Sanders, second round pick. There's nothing wrong with that. It used to be very normal for guys to go in second round. And then we got out of whack and just guys got to get overdrafted. And shit, Mac Jones went 15. Mac Jones should have gone like the fourth round. John, avid listener. The frustration for me is when the NFL fans this time of year continue to comment that their team should go out and pick up a player or a player not remembering that it takes 2 teams to make a deal. I'm a diehard Jets fan, so I understand the frustration of losing, but I was wondering how you feel when you hear people thinking that because trades make sense for their team, that the team is not doing anything to improve. I think one thing that's really out of whack this time of year, especially when we get to the draft, like why didn't they trade back? So I would have loved to. I would have loved to move back 7 spots and accumulate 2 more second round picks. Guess what? No one picked up the phone. No one called me. So yeah. I want to go on a date. Well, you got to find someone to go on a date with you, or else you're just going to be sitting at the bar eating dinner alone. I mean, it takes 2 to tango, baby. I think it would be a bad move about Aaron Rodgers. Let's be real. Minnesota is a very, very liberal city, and I have a hard time seeing them be okay with a free thinker like Aaron. My question is how long until politics has a foothold on all things sports, not just the NFL? I would say that if you spend a lot of time online, you think it's everything. If you just close your phone and go out and live life, people are just pretty normal and everyone is just living life. I also think you'd be pretty, I would imagine, I remember asking teams around the election what they thought like the split was in their locker room. I couldn't find a team that wasn't like 75 to 80% Trump. The NFL players, coaches, executives leans heavy to one way. It's a Republican league. And based on the demos of fans, it also leans that way as well. Hell, just based on the demos currently of younger people. They all are currently leaning right. So I think you'd be naive to think that the large percentage of people on the Minnesota Vikings right now aren't opposite of what the city doesn't care. If Aaron Rodgers was good, it wouldn't matter. Now I think it's more of a risk because he's 41 years old and he hasn't played well. I was thinking Aaron Rodgers is kind of, you know, in this weird spot of like he is being talked about. Like I think 5, 6 years ago, he's kind of like the Rogan of athletes. He would have been considered like a hippie liberal, like I think like earlier on in his career. And now he's considered some right wing lunatic. I mean, it's just, but again, that's the internet. You know, if you just turn off, now he does some other shit that, I mean, clearly there's some football locker room stuff that rubs some people the wrong way. But I don't think I think society's kind of just moved on. People are just living life. And I think if you turn off your phone and just go out, like society's pretty normal right now. Just like it mostly always is. I think it's easy to get consumed when you're just online a lot and think the world is a lot different than it actually is. So I would lean that most of these players, uh, which I find funny because the sports media leans heavily left, yet the people they cover clearly are not. Uh, but yeah, ultimately it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. That'd be my overall take. Who gives a flying fuck? When it comes to college basketball and March Mania, one thing is for sure: nothing's for sure. Upsets, buzzer beaters, Cinderellas, top seeds going home early. It's all gonna happen. Bet the unexpected. Every upset, every day with DraftKings Sportsbook. With live betting, exclusive content, promos, and parlays, DraftKings is the ultimate college basketball destination for March. Ready to make your first bet? Check out matchups and pick a team to win. It's that simple. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet 5 to get 200 in bonus bets instantly. Bet the unexpected with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code JOHN, that's J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN for new customers to get 200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. If you were a GM, what position would you consistently look to draft high and what position would you wait on? For example, wide receivers have a pretty high bust rate in the first round. So many teams pass and strike it rich later in the draft. I think running back for sure. I think pretty consistently running back, guards, and centers. I think you can find really good guards and centers all throughout the draft. Safety, I mean, it's not like safety doesn't tend to get drafted high. And for whatever reason, like you just don't need to take linebackers that high. Now, granted, there aren't many worthy of being high, but you find a lot of starting linebackers in the third, fourth, fifth round. I think these wide receivers get drafted consistently so high, and then we see guys in the third round become really good players. I think it's a lot of the skill guys. I mean, I would have a strong inclination to draft linemen high. At the end of the day, though, whoever you pick high, if that guy becomes a great player, it doesn't really matter. So, like, if I draft a wide receiver in the top 10 and he becomes Jamar Chase, no one says, well, you should have drafted Penei Sewell, even though the Bengals' offensive line is not good. But if Jamar Chase had just been okay, it would be a major problem. But it's like, is Jamar Chase going to the Hall of Fame with Penei Sewell? Not as big a deal. What is the conversation on physical growth when the draft comes around? Talking about Genty on your last mailbag, he's 5'8", but a lot of these guys are coming in to the NFL 2 or 3 years before they biologically stop growing at 25. Is there talks about people having a chance to get stronger, bigger, and become taller? When you prospect out a player, I think there's a major gap between a guy has growth potential, meaning, let's say I find a DB. Travis Hunter, I think, is a guy, what does Travis Hunter weigh? 180 pounds, 185 pounds? Well, do you believe that Travis Hunter can add 10 pounds, no problem? I would imagine most people do. Travis Hunter, did he go to the combine? I know he did. Where are his measurables? 165 pounds in high school. He was 188 pounds at the combine. So if you think Travis Hunter can still maintain the speed and athleticism and be 198 pounds at another 10 pounds, there's growth potential of finding an offensive lineman who might be a little slim but weighs 295 pounds that you think can become 310 pounds, right? But I don't think we talk in the NFL about guys getting taller. Like if you think Ashton Genty, how often do guys grow at 25 years old? I that does not get factored in. Size wise, can he add muscle if he needs it? And he doesn't feel like he does. But I don't think people think that Ashton Genty is going to get taller. At the combine, he was 5'8.5" and 210 pounds. So like girth is not an issue. It's just height. And it's just more height. Like, do small players become superstars? Because if you're going to draft this guy in the top 10, you better hope he's a superstar. Big fan of the show. My dad, my brother, and I just did a podcast where we used a 64 movie bracket to decide the greatest sports movies of all time. What is your favorite sports movie of all time? And what qualities do you think makes a good sport movie? I think the easy answer would be Rudy, as just an undersized pulling guard at Davis High School. It always resonated with me, Rudy Rudiger. I always had a soft spot for Blue Chips with Nick Nolte, Shaquille O'Neal, and Penny Hardaway. I fucking love that movie. Uh, Remember the Titans. You're not going to have many people push back on that. Mighty Ducks, when I was a kid, was a pretty big deal. Little Giants as well. Is Happy Gilmore a sports movie? I'd say that would be pretty high on the list. Sucker for Waterboy, like that. So, but I mean, if you had to say what's your favorite sports movie of all time, I think it would be between Rudy and Blue Chips. Now, Blue Chips to me was a legitimate movie. Rudy's your classic story that they basically made up a lot of elements to it. Joe Montana, I don't think is a big fan of Rudy Rudiger, who he was the quarterback on those teams. I think he thinks that the movie was kind of BS, but who cares? That's part of Hollywood. Question for the mailbag. Was having a debate with some friends about whether quarterbacks nowadays need to be dual threat guys in order to win a Super Bowl. In the past, pocket guys like Tom Breeze, Peyton Eli, Big Ben could move when he was younger, won Super Bowls, but now with the top guys like Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Herbert, Hurts, and Jaden being threat to run, at least, seems like the times have changed. Burrow, of course, being an outlier. Do you think we'll see a pocket quarterback win a Super Bowl in the near future? Or do you think these teams need a quarterback who at least is a threat to run in order to win it all? I think Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Drew Brees in their prime would be fine. None of those players exist in college. Like, look at what's Cam Ward. He's an athlete. Shedeur is known as not a good athlete because he's compared to his dad, but Shedeur can move. Jackson Dart can move. Will Howard, Riley Leonard. So it's just all these guys coming into those guys don't exist. When's the last time we saw like a Jared Goff? I mean, Jared Goff. I mean, they just don't come into the NFL like that anymore. So I don't know what's happened. Maybe they're playing baseball or golf, but if you can't move, maybe you just don't get to start in high school anymore. They just don't exist. I mean, the quarterbacks I grew up on, besides Steve Young, were all pretty like pocket quarterbacks. And I would say definitely like when I got into like high school, in the early 2000s, the influx of Manning, Brady, Carson Palmer, Matt Stafford had some athleticism. I would say Aaron Rodgers was kind of a hybrid. Um, younger Favre could move, but again, they were not looking to run; they were throwers. So maybe they were like Mahomes. I mean, I would consider Josh Allen a dual threat. Lamar clearly. Question for the bag. Kind of a niche question, but do you think of a team, maybe Denver, drafting Montana State's quarterback Tommy Milo in the 6th or 7th round, using him in a Taysom Hill, played in 2 national championships and has proven to be an elite athlete? I'll be honest, haven't broken down much film of Montana State, but I actually remember watching some of the playoffs and getting a text from a scouting buddy that liked the guy. So I know nothing about him, but the highest level guys at D1 AA, the Montana State, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, those guys are being scouted heavily. So I'll take your word for it. Next Taysom Hill, Montana State. What determines the hierarchy between guys in NFL locker rooms? Is it salary, age, stats production, or something else? Uh, well, it's not like I think a lot of locker rooms people are just kind of hanging. It's not there's not like this isn't Rome. I mean, clearly when you get guys like Brady, Manning, Mahomes at this level, it's pretty clear who your best players are. But I think that's what makes football pretty special. In my experience, like most guys are just obviously there are some people that are just angry and edgy and you just kind of leave them alone. Most dudes are pretty just kind of enjoying life. I don't know. When you say hierarchy, all lockers are kind of the same. Trent Williams actually had multiple lockers, but for the most part, it's not like if you work at Morgan Stanley or a banking firm and you're on a certain floor of a high rise in Chicago or New York, there are only so many corner offices, right? Or you work at Apple, you might have a cubicle in the middle. Like some lockers are a little better than others, like logistically in the locker room, but like your locker is still the size of my locker. If I want to use a toilet and you want to use a toilet, we're both using the same toilets. We all shower from the same shower heads. So we both all deal with the same equipment guy. I think it's more of like a respect. Some people are just less likely to kind of pop off to certain individuals, but I also think the locker room is like in a weird way a great equalizer, right? I mean, there are some people in these locker rooms now making worth hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And then there are guys in the locker room making 10 grand a week that can be cut at any moment. And they could just be eating a sandwich at the same table together and having a long conversation because they both played in the SEC. Hell, they might have both played at Alabama or Iowa or wherever and be having a conversation about like their girlfriends. I mean, we're just dudes. I mean, it's not. I think I think the hierarchy thing of now there's a way to act. And to me, the people that kind of, you've heard the Patriot guys talk about this over the years of like, there's certain people, it's hard to be, Mr. Disciplinarian if you are the last guy on the roster. You can't be telling everyone how to act if you're not a hard worker. So it's like, I would say the quote unquote leaders have to be your better players. But I think well run teams don't have a lot of slapdicks on their team, don't have a lot of guys doing stupid shit. Now, again, we're guys, we will do dumb things, but I think there's in a weird way a lot of like equality in a locker room, regardless of who's rich and who's not, just because people are just friends with each other. Doesn't mean you listen. You work at a place, you might hate some people on your team, but I don't think it's quite like you might envision. At least in my experience, and I've said over and over, it gets a huge headline when a guy gets in trouble, when a guy gets arrested. The overwhelming majority of dudes in the league are pretty high level cats. And like I think a large percentage of them are just really impressive, good guys. It's become my favorite over the last couple of years. My question is in regards to top five quarterback debate. I feel like a lot of the discussion about how this and while recency bias obviously has a huge impact in most discussions, I feel it should be the five best quarterbacks as a collective talent wise. Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, Herbert. Where do you stand on this topic? Should it be quarterbacks who just had the best season or true top five talents? I think once you establish yourself as the top dog, like you stay there. Mahomes did not have a better season than Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. It is undeniable that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were better players than Patrick Mahomes this season. Undeniable. Yet Mahomes, like, he's entrenched at the number one spot. Why? He's been to five Super Bowls in 6 years, and he's made enormous plays against both those guys in the biggest moments when it all matters. It's like James Harden had better individual seasons, I guess one individual season, than Steph Curry and LeBron James. You would have to be high on fentanyl. Daryl Morey might have been because he was calling him the greatest offensive player ever. It's like no human being would bet on this guy to win a big game. He's not a better player than this guy, even though he had a better individual season. Now, I was texting with a buddy or talking to him on the phone. Like, I think current today, Josh Allen is the best player in the NFL, but he's never even been to a Super Bowl, let alone won one. But I think today he's the best player in the NFL. And if I could choose, like if all things were equal, right? I don't have Andy Reid. I don't have Veach. Like every team, all coaches and GMs are equal. I would take Josh Allen number one overall. But like I'm not gonna act like he's the. I would have Mahomes one right now too, because every single year he finds a way to beat those guys. What are your expectations you have for the Falcons? As a diehard Falcons fan, it's just been nothing but grief since Super Bowl. Also, should we let Kyle Pitts go? You know what's funny? And listen, I like the draft as much as any human being. When media hype gets to a certain level, and it did with Kyle Pitts, it's like this guy can't miss. This guy's going to be like Travis Kelsey meets Tony Gonzalez meets Jerry Rice. And then you watch him, you're like, is this guy even good? Clearly, he's not bad. He actually had a couple moments last year, but he's 24 years old. He's going in to his fifth season. God, he has just not produced. His career year was his rookie year. 68 catches, 1,000 yards. Last season, he had 47 catches, 600 yards, and four touchdowns. He has 10 career touchdowns. Even if he was catching 50, 60 balls, you would think Kyle Pitts would be like a 10 touchdown guy because he's tall, he's athletic. Kyle Pitts is 6'5". Kyle Pitts is almost 6'6". This guy is a freak. I mean, he's 6'5" and 5/8. This was at the combine. 245 pounds. His he ran a 4.40. I guess that was from this pro day, but I don't know, man. I don't quite get Kyle Pitts. I listened to every episode. I'm from Germany. If the NFL would restart tomorrow, who would be your top 5, 10 non-quarterback players to start a franchise with? Mine would list like this in no particular order: Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson, TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, Sewell, Worst, Jefferson, Jamar Chase. I think you'd have to factor in age. Uh, it's crazy. Like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are incredible, but if you could choose, like if you had the number one overall pick, and I gave you three players: Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, or Penei Sewell, it'd be really hard for me to pass on the lineman. It really would. Because would you rather have Penei Sewell and AJ Brown, or an average tackle in Justin Jefferson? It's like, well, if your quarterback's getting peppered every game, and then listen, Myles Garrett's about to be 30 years old. I couldn't. TJ's 31. He's kind of getting to that point. Crosby's a little older. He was I think, a senior in college, so he's, played a long time in college and been in the NFL however many years now, 6, 7 years. Aiden Hutchinson would be a pretty good one. Aiden Hutchinson might, if he hadn't broken his leg, he might be the number one pick. I mean, when he broke his leg, wasn't he on pace for like 20 sacks? 24 years old. He had 7.5 sacks through 5 games. So I think it's safe to say you could make the argument, if all things are healthy, two of the top 5 picks would be Penei Sewell and Aiden Hutchinson. Shocker, the Lions are good. Look why they're good. We talk so much about their explosive offense, their coordinators. I mean, their two best players are their pass rusher and their tackle. We've heard some interesting clauses in NFL contracts before. Kyler's video games, we always hear certain players have to stay within certain weights. Is there any limit to what these clauses can be? For instance, would the NFL allow a team to say player X has to be drug tested at 6 a.m. every week for weed or alcohol, or that a player can't go to certain places during the season? Well, weed and alcohol are legal, so the NFL no longer tests for weed. I guess you could have, back once you got in the program. What was the guy's name? Josh Gordon. You got in the program, they tested you a lot for it, but weed's a legal substance in the NFL, which I always thought was funny. Like, you don't think the coaches are smoking every once in a while? You don't think the owners are smoking, and the players can't, smoke a joint? But that's over. And I always defended, like, The only reason the NFL cared because it was for insurance purposes, because it was federally illegal or illegal. So they've changed that. I The alcohol thing would probably be more if you got a DUI and the court ordered it. The NFL doesn't want to be in the business of doing this stuff. I think a lot of the clauses include things like you're not allowed to play basketball, you're not allowed to go snow skiing. It's like let's say I like to snow ski and I'm a quarterback. I think Matt Stafford or someone made a comment, maybe Tom Brady, like he couldn't ski when he was playing. Don't blame you. Like if I'm the team, like I can't have you skiing. No, you know, motorcycles, jet skis, things of that nature. Can you imagine if like your starting running back shatters his leg on a dirt bike? And some of these guys obviously enjoy that stuff. So I think it's a lot of you'd have to talk to a contract negotiator, but there might even be some like universal language about certain things. And then specifically when I know that you like doing something, I also think they can tell people. Remember, Miles Garrett had that clip of him playing basketball, and he looked like LeBron James. It was incredible. It's like, could this guy be in the NBA right now? And the Browns immediately called him and like, you can't be playing basketball. It's like you can pop an Achilles or tear an ACL or break an ankle. So I think it's more related to the body than it is like you're not allowed to go to. I'm a bad guy to ask on this. I'm not a big quote unquote club guy, but like if you live in Miami, you can't go to these five clubs. I don't think that's necessarily ever taken place. Um, but I would imagine it's a lot of skiing, skydiving, rock climbing, stuff like that than it is substances. I mean, the part of the reason the Kyler Murray thing went so viral is because no one had ever heard of that before. And it was also because a lot of guys play video games. When I was his age, I played a ton of video games. Now, I've always defended the video game crowd. Video games now, when I was a kid, or even like in college, you could only play somebody if they were sitting right next to you. So if I wanted to play Madden or NBA 2K or Mario Kart or whatever, Call of Duty, I had to play you. You had to be in the room with me. Well, now I can sit at my house and I can play you in whatever. You could be in India, you could be in China, you could be in Europe. It doesn't matter. Like that, and the graphics are incredible. Though I always thought Fortnite, I never quite understood. I always thought the graphics looked terrible. But Call of Duty, I does look kind of fun. Like if I was 22 and didn't have much going on, and I could just go shoot up a bunch of people. I mean, I grew up in an era where gonna date me, but we played Doom, and all you could see was a gun, and you just walked around, and the graphics were terrible. When what's it called? Grand Theft Auto came out, it felt like we had like hit the jackpot. And looking back at those graphics 20 years ago compared to now, it's not even close. I think that was more of like, bro, we just need you to study film. And that's the thing. If a guy doesn't like studying film, he's not gonna like studying film. If it's usually not something that if by your third or fourth year you don't enjoy at that position, it's probably never gonna happen. But kind of likes playing Call of Duty.